Welcome to day one of the Glute Core Challenge. This challenge is designed to take you step by step through what actually works so that you can load your glutes and get maximum results. So each workout is going to be about 15 to 20 minutes and build on the previous one that you see, following a very structured progression, starting with breath and core control, improving range of motion, and then we're gonna layer on strength. So today's focus is the foundation of everything. It's our breath, core activation, and hamstring engagement. Now, most people will breathe straight into their chest or just into their belly. Now, when this happens, we are limiting the core and pelvic floor function we have available to us through our diaphragm. So today, we're going to be working on 360-degree breathing, which is through the rib cage to really access the diaphragm and what is known as the stack. So that is the rib cage to pelvis on top of each other so that the diaphragm can work with the pelvic floor. And when we breathe and work within the stack, this is going to help us create better stability and control. So this session today is going to be very key because we are going to focus on rib cage mobility for better core and pelvic floor function. That is through our diaphragm. We're also going to focus on activating the hamstrings to help position the pelvis correctly. And then we're also going to introduce hip shifting and rotation, which will help to improve movement patterns. So please don't skip these foundational steps. They are the secret to better strength, less tension, and glutes that actually fire when they should. So let's get started. Don't forget to share your progress as you go throughout this mini challenge. Make sure you tag me on Instagram and Facebook stories for a chance to win a free year of workouts. And I want to mention you can always comment below the video if you have a question or a movement you're quite unsure of. We will help coach you along through the way by responding to you in the comments. So let's get started. I will meet you on your mat. Welcome to day one of our Glute Core Mini Challenge. You're going to need a yoga mat or something to lay on top of. I have 2 towel rolls and I'm going to show you some different ways to use them. I have my yoga block and a Pilates ball. Now, we are going to get started with breathing, which is the key to our core and diaphragm and pelvic floor working together. Now, let me give you a brief rundown of why. Our pelvic floor and diaphragm ideally work together on every single breath. The diaphragm lives within our rib cage. When we take an inhale, the diaphragm, which lives in a domed position, will descend and flatten and expand to bring air into the body. When it does this, our rib cage, belly, and back will expand, and then our pelvic floor below will be pushed down and lengthen in response to that diaphragm descent. So it will lengthen like a trampoline and lengthen the muscles of the pelvic floor. On an exhale, the reverse happens. The pelvic floor leads the way, and then the core draws up and in and compresses. The rib cage compresses as the diaphragm comes back to its dome shape. Now there's one single breath, and that is how we get the diaphragm and pelvic floor to work together with the muscles of the core and set ourselves up for success with strength and stability of our core and glutes. Now the best way to do this is by finding how do we get that orientation of ribs over pelvis in everything that we do to optimize that primary relationship. And that is what is called the stack. So you will hear the reference of this stack, especially early in this 14 days. And I really want you to understand that concept of every single breath working with our pelvic floor to set us up for success. So we are going to start with one of the most important things, that is breathing. And the first thing we're going to work on is narrow child's pose breathing. So this is where you are going to grab your yoga block and you're going to come down onto hands and knees. Now, with this position, what we're focusing on is breathing into this back body. So in the intro, I told you too many people will breathe forward into their belly and forget that we have a rib cage that lives in 360 degrees in this dimension. So we're focusing on breathing into our back body here between our shoulder blades. So sometimes I like to think about telling people, when you go to the doctor and they ask you to breathe into your back when they're listening to you, and it takes you a moment to kind of figure that out, we're working on creating that breathing pattern through this. So you're gonna grab your yoga block and come down onto your hands and knees. And you are going to bring your forearms to the ground. And you're going to surround that yoga block with your forearms as you come into this position. Now, if this is difficult, you can place a pillow or perhaps a yoga block or 2 pillows or a rolled blanket between you. What we really want you to achieve here is a physical block to your front body, so that when you breathe, we're not going to breathe into the belly, we're going to be able to breathe into the backside. So come on down to forearms, cup that block, and then bring your forehead to the block. Now, if you can't do that, that's okay. You're going to stay upright like this and just stay in this position with your physical block. So I'll stay here so I can talk to you. If you are upright like this, I want you to gaze forward and down on your mat. If I look down at my block, I'm going to close off my airway and I'm not going to find my breathing that we're working towards. So start with your mouth gently closed. I don't want you clenching your jaw. Your tongue is to the roof of your mouth. This is going to help our nasal breathing that we're going to come into, and that really helps us connect to our diaphragm. Now, in this position with the block, whether your head is up or long, start to squeeze the block as if you're going to squeeze it between your forearms. As you do that, you're going to get a rounding or protraction of your shoulder blades. So just a gentle squeeze to help set that in motion. Now, whether you have a physical block of a pillow here or your forehead down, I want you to take an inhale, tongue to the roof of your mouth, breathe in, and breathe out. All the air out, about 75%, it sounds like this. Long, slow exhale. Now, at the end of that exhale, you should feel your core tension turn on. That means I'm feeling my deep core activate, and I'm going to feel like I have some tension. Now, hold that tension. Don't let it all go. Take another inhale, and your inhale is going to send into that upper back. Breathe in. Long, slow exhale. Fog up the mirror. Hold that tension. Send that breath between your shoulder blades. Breathe in. Exhale. Each time you're going to keep holding that tension. You're going to keep moving the next inhale further into this backside and not into the front belly. Let's take 2 more together. Breathe in. And out. 1 more. Exhale. Okay. Come on up. Here is where we are going to get onto our backs, and I want to offer you some options with your towel. So I have 2 different towels because I'm going to offer you 2 different suggestions. If you have a body type that you identify with being more in an anterior pelvic position, so maybe you have this wide rib thrust forward, maybe you feel like your pelvis really spills forward, you have an exaggerated extension in your back. I'm going to give you an option with your towels, different from somebody who maybe identifies with looking a little bit more dropped through the front of the body and flat in the low back. So think about where you might identify. If you're not sure, you can try these 2 different techniques based on what I'm targeting you with the breathing to see how that feels for you. Okay, so we are going to come onto our backs. You can have your towels nearby, also have your yoga block and your Pilates ball. We're focusing on a long, slow exhale, and we're going to focus on breathing into our chest and just learning to breathe into the ground. So we breathed into our back on our hands and knees, and I want to see if you can move that breath back onto the yoga mat as well. So if you are somebody who identifies with a flat back, you are going to place a towel roll just underneath at the top of your sacrum. So that's where your spine meets your pelvis. You're going to take a little towel roll and put it underneath there. Because you have a more flat back presentation, we want to introduce a gentle curve through the lumbar spine that should be there. And then I want everybody to take their second towel roll and put that underneath your back at your shoulder blades. That's going to help us keep our sternum lifted, because a lot of people will drop their sternum as they're trying to learn how to breathe, and that's going to actually work against us to push pressure down. Now, if you are the opposite and you feel like you are very extended through the low back, maybe you're that anterior pelvic tilt and ribs flaring, well, I want you to take something underneath your feet. So this yoga block isn't very thick, but if you have a higher one, that might not be the right thing, but you're going to put something under your feet. You can even roll up your yoga mat and do that. So if you identify with a sway back or flat back, it's towel under the sacrum. If you are more flex, you are going to, extended, you're going to put something under your feet. I identify more with a forward tilt, so I'm going to demonstrate that one. So go ahead and get your towel roll, and you're going to put that underneath your shoulder blades, and we're gonna lay on down. So the goal here in this position is to come into contact with the ground and learn how to breathe, not just into the belly, but how do we breathe into our ribs, belly, and back in this position. So I'd like to bring my hands to my rib cage and belly and just start to check in. So again, depending on how you're feeling, I want you to feel ground contact. If you're somebody who's super extended, you're gonna have a hard time down here finding the ground. So again, being elevated can help you. So here we go. I feel that ground contact. I'm gonna have my tongue to the roof of my mouth, breathe in, belly, rib, and backs are going to expand. So I want you to think about on that inhale, that back body breathing we just found, can you breathe into the ground instead of just out? Inhale here. Long, slow exhale. You can pause for a moment in your exhaled state. And again, breathe in. Exhale. So often, many people will upper ab grip or have these external obliques fire too hard on their exhale, and it will drop the ribs and it will again push pressure down. So really focus long, slow, soft exhale. And on your breath in, it's not just this belly breathing. Breathe back, breathe into the ground, breathe into the rib cage. 3 more breaths just like this. Inhale. Breathe into the towel beneath your back. Breathe into the ground beneath you. Last one. So don't fear if this is completely new to you and you are not quite sure about it. I want you to just know that you are going to see these kind of progress and change and have a chance to work on these throughout the days. So we are going to stay on our back and we are going to work on some pelvic tilting. Now, what that looks like is the pelvis going anterior and posterior. We need to learn different pelvic movements in our body. Now, the biggest problem is over clenching with the glutes to drive that movement. So that would look like I'm gonna squeeze so that I can flatten my back. So I want you to just play around with, and don't feel like there's a right or wrong right now, is if my feet are connected to the ground and I'm on my back, I'm going to bring my fingers to my pelvis and my bony hip points, and I'm going to cup around the back as well. And I want you to play around with, can you inhale as you move forward in this anterior position? Can you exhale and flatten and round and tuck without clenching your glutes? That's going to look like drawing this core in, and I want you to do that on an exhale. So inhale, spill forward. Exhale. Soft exhale. Okay, we're not forcing anything. I don't want you to overcomplicate the activation pattern. You can start to see if you feel the front of your pelvis as you draw the hips back while your glutes remain relaxed. Inhale. Exhale. Breath in. Now on this next one, I want to introduce a different concept to you. With your feet connected to the ground, I want you to imagine as if you were going to drag your heel towards your bottom, but they're going to stay in place. And so when you do that, you're going to start to feel your hamstrings and your hamstrings near your pelvis. So keep that activation in line and then play around with your tilting. Inhale, exhale. Inhale. Exhale, drag through the heels. Pelvis posterior. 2 more. Okay, nice job. So that is some pelvic tilting. We're looking to get some rotation and movement at the pelvis. Now we are going to come to the wall, and this is where you're going to have your Pilates ball or your yoga block. Either one will work. We are coming onto our back for something called 90-90 with a reach. So in a 90-90, my feet are on the wall. I have my shoes on. You can have your shoes off. There's not a right or wrong. I need to have 90 degrees from my foot, knee, and hip. So make sure you adjust accordingly in that position. Now, just like our breathing, you may benefit from having your sternum elevated. You can play around with these. You might benefit from having your neck elevated as well, either on a towel or a yoga block. So there is no complete right or wrong. If you feel like you're struggling to breathe, try some of those support patterns. Now, my ball is going to go between my knees. In a 90-90, one of the most important things to focus on is that first you feel your feet into the ground. We're going to dive into our feet and our kinetic chain a lot in these 14 days, and this is the first place to start. So with my feet on the wall, I want to make sure I feel the base of my big toe, the base of my pinky toe, and I want to feel my heel. I want to feel that on both feet connected into the wall. Now, I'm not pushing with a lot of force into the wall, but I am feeling my feet connected to the ground. So start there first, feel that connection. Now, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to think about that heel drag I was just talking to you about as if I was going to pull my foot down the wall, but I'm not going to move it. Now, as I start to drag, I'm going to feel my hamstrings fire up. And where I want you to feel your hamstrings is this proximal hamstring right here at the base of your pelvis. And that is going to help pull the pelvis into a position that's going to help us achieve our rib cage to pelvis stack. So that's that stack I told you is so important. So the most important thing as we're going through these different additions is that we don't lose the previous step. So find your 3 positions of each foot on the wall and don't lose those as you start to drag the hamstrings and drag the heels and find your hamstrings. Now, when you drag your hamstrings, those glutes stay loose, that pelvis will come back and that tailbone will lift slightly off the ground. We are not talking inches off the ground. I am not lifted like this with my bottom, but my tail is going to tuck as I bring my pelvis back with my hamstrings. Okay, so put it all together. We've got feet, hamstrings, and I'm going to hold this position. Now I'm going to gently squeeze that ball. Not with a lot of might, just about a 3 or 4, not even out of 10 on the squeeze. Now the goal here is to encourage breathing into the ground as we learn to breathe with core tension. So I want you to take a soft inhale, tongue to the roof of your mouth, breathe in, and then exhale. Reach your arms over your shoulders. Now you should feel your core turn on as you've taken that nice exhale. And I want you to breathe in again. This time the breath is really going to move lateral, and I want you to breathe down into the ground. Inhale. Exhale. Hold that core tension. Again, we're moving breath, which is mostly too far forward in people. We're moving it lateral and into the back. So breathe into the sides and back. Breathe into the ground. Feel that push and that pressure from that breathing. Inhale. Exhale. 2 more. Holding the foot, inner thighs, and hamstrings the whole time. Nice. Go ahead and release and take a break. So we are just going to do that one time today. You will continue to see that. But I want to remind you that this is starting to get the hamstrings and rib cage together working. All right, we are going to go into another 90-90 variation. We're going to come back and set up the same, but we are going to work on connecting our feet a little bit more. Okay. Come on back, feet on the wall. We're going to press and feel our three corners of our foot, big toe, baby toe, heel. I'm going to start to drag through my heels. I'm going to feel my hamstrings and I'm going to squeeze the ball. Now, you can stay down here or you can reach. What we're going to do here is we're going to play around with some more foot and hamstring connection. So we're going to take an inhale, rise up onto the balls of the toes. Exhale, lower, drag the heels, find that hamstring. Okay, let's do about 5 to 8 of those together. Inhale. Exhale, lower. Drag, find that proximal hamstring. Okay? You can reach. Exhale. Breathe in. We're still breathing laterally and into the back. Lateral back body. Let's do 2 more. Rise up onto the balls of the toes. Don't lose those hamstrings. So we're maintaining our pelvic position. Awesome. Okay, go ahead and release that. We are going to come back to our mat. We're going to work through 3 more things. We're going to work on some internal rotation, and that is going to look like being on our hands and knees. So your wrists are underneath your shoulders and your knees are under hips. And you are going to be about hip width apart, maybe slightly wider. You're going to bring your toes in, heels out. Now, in this position, we are biasing that pelvis towards more internal rotation. And internal rotation of our pelvis and hips allows our glutes to find full length. Now, this is really, really important, so listen to me when I say this. A muscle needs to lengthen before it can contract to really have benefit of strength training and strength gains. And so we are working on finding length here and what that looks like at the pelvis so that when we add strength, we can really contract and load those muscles. So in this position, we are creating more internal rotation, and you're just going to gently rock the entire body back. You should feel some more space happening between the sits bones. Inhale. Exhale, come forward. Now, if you feel pinchy at the hips when you do that, see if you play around with your base of support a little bit more. And then I also want to cue you to pay attention to your pelvis. Again, if you're someone who spills forward a lot, that's going to feel very, very pinchy. So play around with our previous pelvic tilting. See if you can find what looks like more of a neutral position and then try. If you still struggle, you can even take that Pilates ball and put it between the groin, and that might help you also find those femurs push out a little bit more and find that internal rotation more easily. So let's rock back together with 5 breaths. Inhale, exhale. When you come forward, I want you to start to draw your attention to your lower core. Can you feel that lower core lifting from the bottom as we've talked about? So inhale is pelvic floor length. That trampoline is descending. My diaphragm is lengthening. Exhale. Slow lift from the bottom. Inhale, feel that length. Pelvic floor is lengthening between your sits bones. Exhale. 2 more. Last one. Inhale, sit back. Exhale. Now, set that ball aside. I want everybody to try 3 breaths in this next position, which is inverted breathing. You're just going to come down to your forearms. If being on your wrist was difficult in that last one, I want you to think about that protraction through the back that we started with. I want you to look forward between your hands, and we're gonna breathe here. Breathe into your lateral rib cage, breathe into your back. Breathe into your posterior pelvis. You can do this in that position with those toes in, heels out. You may feel that zip from the bottom better in this if you are someone who couldn't relax on your wrists. 2 more. Last one. Okay, well done. We are going to do some side lying hip shifting, and then we're going to end with some lateral breathing. So because our first days take a little bit more time to explain, please lean into it. If it runs a little bit longer than the 15 to 20, it will be efficient overall. Okay, we are going to come into a side lying position with our Pilates ball, and you're going to be up against a wall with both feet flat. I have a little bit of a buffer here, so I can't be completely flat with my bottom foot, but it won't matter too much for this. So we are going to be at 90 from our ankle, knee, and hip, and we're going to lay on our side. If you like, you can put a rolled towel or your yoga block underneath your head. What we are trying to do here is get our pelvis and sacrum shifting. So my bottom leg is going to stay anchored on the ground, and I'm going to shift forward with my right knee, and I'm going to let it roll on this ball. So I'm going to shift forward, inhale. Exhale, I'm going to shift back and inhale. So you see that my knee is moving forward and back. My bottom knee is staying about relatively still. So I'm getting my pelvis and my sacrum to move in different directions. Play around with the breathing. I like to inhale into these positions and hold. Exhale as I drag back. Now, I don't want you to thrust that pelvis forward, though, into an extended position. And so I want you to think about our previous 90-90. Engage your heels into the wall. Get your hamstrings on as you shift. So as you shift back, you're going to be creating more space in the back of the hip, in the posterior pelvis, in the pelvic floor, where our glutes live, so we can lengthen them. Let's do one more. Drag the hamstrings. So drag the heels, find the hamstrings. All right, flip on over. And we're going to attempt on the opposite side. So I'm going to move my mic real quick to make sure I don't compress that. Lay on your side, 90-90. So I want you to find 90-90 on your side with your ball. And then I want you to think about those heels dragging into the wall to get your hamstrings on. From here, we shift with breath. Inhale. So I'm not I'm not rounding forward. I am staying in that nice neutral position. I've got my heel dragging as I shift. Breathe in. Breath in again. I should feel some opening and length happening in my posterior pelvis. One more. As I shift forward, I'm not dumping into my pelvis. I'm keeping that nice hamstring drag. Last inhale here. Nice job. Okay, we're going to finish with one more breathing. This is going to help you come into a little bit more of a relaxed state. You can have your yoga block, towels, play around with what feels good to you. We worked on our front body breathing and our back body. We're going to end with some lateral breathing. So you can roll up some towel rolls. You can put your yoga block, play around with what works for you. You can even have a yoga block under your head. So this is not high enough for me, but I'm going to grab my yoga block. I'm going to put it underneath the upper part of my rib cage. So if we think we've got lower ribs and then we've got this upper rib cage, I'm going to come up higher underneath just below my armpit, and we're going to lay on our side, and I'm going to cup my top rib. So what I'm doing is I'm compressing the bottom part so I can breathe into my upper ribs. Remember, we want lateral expansion, not just belly breathing. We want our lateral and back ribs to expand. So we're going to lay here. I'm going to cup my upper ribs. I'm going to take an inhale, and I'm going to think about that upper umbrella expanding into my hand, and then I'm just going to exhale. Again, breathe in, follow that rib as it lifts and expands like an umbrella. And exhale. 2 more. Last one. Well done. Let's flip on over. Last time, we're going to do 4 breaths on the opposite side, and we will wrap it up. So lateral expansion, very important. Talk about back body and lateral being very lacking in most individuals. Set that block, towel, pillow underneath your ribs by your armpit. See if you can relax your head as much as possible. Cup that upper rib cage. Inhale. Exhale. So when I exhale, it's not forceful. I'm not crunching in through my obliques. I'm not dropping my sternum. Breathe in. Two more. Last one. All right, come on up to a seat. Well done today. Thanks for joining for day 1 in our Glute Core mini challenge. Don't forget, you can drop questions below the box if you are unsure about or need some clarification. We would love to help and coach you on that, as well as sharing on your socials. If you are learning something new, we would love to hear it and enjoy that others are joining along with you. All right, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we explore some new movements.